Back again, this time with The Last Days of Jack Sparks by Jason Arnopp. I read this with Rachel's book club over at the Shades of Orange. If you're not familiar with her, I'll have a link to her channel down in my description. This book is about it's an unfinished book by a writer who has died under mysterious circumstances, and it's published posthumously by the writer's brother. And the brother has also added some extra content into the book. And of course, that is all fiction. Now, I do have some criticisms about this book, but I really, really liked this book a lot. I thought this book was so good. So even though I'm going to offer some what are probably going to sound like harsh criticisms, I thought this book was excellent, and I just want to make that clear right off the bat. So I'm going to try to do a compliment sandwich because I don't want to end on a bad note. I don't want to end with the negative. So the opening of this book makes you laugh right off the bat. I'm going to read you the dedication because it was so funny. The dedication is for my mom and dad who never told me to get a proper job. So not even at page 1, and I was laughing so much. Then you turn the page and there's a quote here by Robert Anton Wilson. If you think you know, and I'm not going to swear here because there's 2 swear words. If you think you know what the heck is going on, you're probably full of poo. So yeah, this quote, of course, when I first started the book, I just kind of shrugging that off. But by the time I got to the end of that book, back to the end of this book, that quote came right back to me, and I was like, what a perfect quote for this book. That perfect quote. That just sums up everything about this book in one sentence. So let me just start off by saying the first half of the book was not nearly as impressive to me as the second half of the book, but I did enjoy the first half of the book. I really, really liked it a lot. Jack Sparks is an extremely unlikable character. You don't really like him, let me backtrack. You don't like him ever throughout the book. So the first half of the book, this is not a good guy. He's a jerk, and he's really self-centered, and he's really selfish, and he has extremely snarky humor. And that is what I enjoyed about Jack Sparks so much, is he was just such a smart aleck, and he was so snarky, and he was so mean that it was funny. You just could not help but laugh all the way through with all of his remarks. It was just so funny. Even the outlandish stuff he does is hilarious. I just laughed through all of that. It was so funny. And this is a horror, and there is lots of horror in this. And I was not creeped out by any of it, but the horror was good. Like, I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed the horror aspect. I was just like, wow, that's gross. but I really still liked reading it. I was like, wow, this is really fun to read. This is kind of a unique horror. If you read the book, you'll see what I'm talking about. I don't want to tell you anything else because I don't want to spoil anything, but it is a sort of its own kind of horror, in my opinion, at least. So we'll do the negative here. So there were 2 things about this book that bothered me. Since it's a fictional unpublished book. A fictional unfinished book. And the brother is posting it after his death. The brother has inserted a lot of like letters and emails and then eyewitness accounts and things like that into the pages of his book. So, but the way it's done is you're reading Jack Sparks, and then all of a sudden it just stops. Like, there's no transition. It just immediately stops. Then this eyewitness account or letter or what have you is inserted in. And so you read that for a little bit, and then that abruptly ends, and it goes right back to where Jack Sparks left off. And that was very sort of jarring for me. I did appreciate the fact that it was adding to the sort of unfinished book atmosphere, so that was good. But the abruptness of it really sort of like took me out of the story that Jack Sparks was telling, and that was the really interesting part. There was one other thing that I didn't like in this book, and it was really, really annoying. Jason Arnopp, I don't know if this is a writing style or if it was just a characteristic of this book. But what he did was he would tell you about something that has happened, or there was some, there was something suspicious or unusual or, surprising. And Jack Sparks would be talking about this thing, but he wouldn't be telling you what the thing is. And I was really getting annoyed by that. I have an example for you. Okay, so Jack Sparks has this book, and he wants this sort of like paranormal professional to examine this book for him, and he gives it to her. And so she is talking about this situation when he gave her the book. And so she says, on the way, he told me what was so weird about the book. I won't tell you this info in case it prejudices your own thought, but it made me even more ticked off that he brought it into my apartment without permission. So there's something really weird about this book that he wants this paranormal expert to examine it and tell him about. But we don't know what the weird thing is. We just get pages of talk about this book between the two of them without knowing what the weird thing is. And Jason Arnopp does that over and over and over through like the first half of the book. And it just got so old. I was so annoyed with that I just wanted to say, stop doing that, Jason Arnopp. But affectionately, of course, because I did love the book so much despite those two things that I didn't like. So like I said, I know it sounds really harsh, it really sounds critical, but the book itself is amazing. So the second half of the book was the best part for me. And also that is where all of the real action, I mean, there's some action in the front part, but the end of it is where all the real action takes place and where the story really starts to come together. And that ending, woo, we'll get to that ending in a minute. Let me just tell you something else that I absolutely loved about this book was I am very much a character person. If I can go into a book and read, really get to know the characters or see how they change and develop over the course of the book, I am thrilled. That is one of my very favorite things to read in a book is character work. I love character work. And this book, I thought did such an amazing job of allowing us to get to know Jack. You know Jack by the end of this book. You may not know what the heck is wrong with this guy or what exactly is going on, but you know him. You know him so well that you can predict how he's going to react in the situations he is in. You know how his thought processes are going to affect his environment. So I thought that was so well done. I was like, wow. And I was really on an emotional roller coaster over my feelings for Jack because I didn't like Jack in the beginning. And then we go through a part where they're talking about his past and, the things he went through as a kid and how that affected his emotional stability. And then I kind of felt sorry for Jack. I was like, oh, well, dang, no wonder he turned out that way. And then right after that, blam, he just does these terrible things that are just way worse than any other part of the book up to that point. It's just so terrible. You're just like, what a terrible, rotten person this guy is. And at that point, I lost all empathy for him. I was like, just forget this guy. He just needs to burn in the downstairs. Forget this guy. So I really, really enjoyed the sort of emotional roller coaster over my feelings towards Jack that I was taken on in this book. I absolutely loved it. That was one of my best experiences with a character in a book. One of the very best ones, easily top 3 probably. So yeah, that was one of my 2 favorite aspects of the book was the character work in here. And then my other favorite part was the ending. I'm not telling you anything about the ending. But I will say that Jason Arnopp tells you a lot of things throughout the book that he doesn't tie together until the end, a lot. And it is really, really, really amazing. I mean, I couldn't believe how amazing that was. the ending, I didn't guess any of that. I guessed one thing. One thing I knew through a good portion of the book, or I shouldn't even say a good portion, but I knew well in advance of finding out. And then everything else, I didn't figure it out until the last minute. I didn't know where it was going until right before it happened. I was like, oh no, this is going to happen. And then it happened, So that was just a crazy, crazy, crazy ending. And that quote in the beginning, as soon as I was done with this book, I thought about that quote in the beginning. I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. So that was The Last Days of Jack Sparks.